As you prepare for this next annual meeting, what is the central theme, and what are some of the sub-themes?
The central theme is the power of collaborative innovation, and I think it's really an excellent choice for the coming year. In fact, if you look at most of the world's problems today, they either require more collaboration among various stakeholders. A classic example would be that the fact that we can't get through the Doha round of trade at the moment. It requires other issues on the global agenda require innovation. Some of them are longer term. If you take a classic example is aging. We've never experienced this in humankind, so we really have to be innovative in our approach. But I think the richness is the fact that you can find some of the most important issues at the intersection of the collaboration and innovation. And I'll give you a classic example is climate change. Another example is nuclear nonproliferation. There's so many issues. Water scarcity is another example of requiring more collaboration and innovation. So I think that richness, that architecture will help the discussions and debates in Davos. And our expectations is I think it'll also resonate with the public, because I think you can argue that as we go into a leadership transition, 2008 we're going to go into election years in many important countries, most notably the United States, Russia, and most likely the United Kingdom at the moment. These are transitions where I think people are going to look to the next generation of leaders to demonstrate much more of a spirit of collaboration, and certainly they'll have to come up with some innovations if they're going to address the key challenges.
On the issue of collaboration, how are you going to be addressing these critical challenges from different angles, from the different directions?
On the business side, I think it's a bit counterintuitive, but we're going to talk about competing while collaborating. And that's very important, because most of the success in the business today requires the ability to reach across the organization, find the talent, the innovation, and have people collaborate very quickly across functional lines and to deliver a product or service very quickly. The other side is that I think businesses also are really going to focus on corporate global citizenship, the notion that they have to collaborate much more with key stakeholders in the areas of operation, but not just in local markets, but globally. I think they have to really demonstrate more and more that they are working in partnership with not only their customers, but also the other stakeholders. And that's something will surface in that context. On the economic side, I think people aren't surprised that it will be about addressing economic insecurity. The market is such today that even we don't know really what was the cause or what the nature of the systemic risk that still exists following the meltdown in the subprime market. And I think going into early 2008, I think there'll be people still very much hesitant in terms of what direction the economy is going to go. One of the big issues is still this question of the U.S. economy and its health. Is it still the driver of global growth? The joke about if the U.S. sneezes, will the rest of the world catches a cold? I think that's still open to interpretation. And people are still very bullish on China and India and taking on a bigger role. But I think that's also going to be open to question, because there's a bit of insecurity and uncertainty going into 2008. There's also, I think, new issues popping up that are concerned of policymakers and industry leaders alike, such as last year we were looking at the boogeyman of private equity. This year it's sovereign wealth funds. So I think there'll be a number of things that surface that are very much linked to the globalization of finance. But on the geopolitical side, it's about essentially aligning interests across divides. And we'll see if this new generation of leadership, particularly in the G7 group of countries, will demonstrate really this capacity to align their interests and work in a concert of powers on most of the pressing issues. It's too soon to tell, but I think that will be very much on minds of people as they look at the Middle East, they look at the situation in parts of Southeast Asia, they look at really the leadership change that's going to happen in the United States and Russia, for example. Also new alliances forming around the world around different issues, and of course the increasing strength of countries that have very much endowed with lots of natural resources and energy. They'll want to have a bigger say. Those are issues. I think that's the context that will go into Davos in 2008, and it'll be interesting to explore with the people that are there, because we expect the leaders, both from business as well as from politics, from those countries to be very present in Davos next year. The third element is on the societal side. I think we're just going to focus a lot on future shifts. There's so many that I think that we've talked about for some time, but really now we're getting to an inflection point in terms of their impact on society. One is demographics, for example, in terms of the aging society and its impact. The other side would be clearly in the developing world, as well as the developed industrialized world, is the growing income inequality. It's clear that growth has been good, but the gap is widening in many key economies. I think we need to explore that. But also normative shifts. Asia is taking a much bigger role in terms of they're the major markets for many industries now, telecom, even the web, automobiles. I mean, they're the consumer powers in those markets, particularly in India and China, and they're going to change things in a way in terms of behavior, pricing, aesthetics. We need to explore that. We also know that in institutions there's going to be shifts, new leaders coming on board, and that's a very important future shift because Asia will have a bigger say, but their leadership style and management style differs. So we'll also look at a lot of cultural differences in the context of the annual meeting coming up. And of course we will still focus a bit on science and technology, particularly the new frontiers in the area of research, particularly with genomics, as well as the brain and how the mind works. As well as a very important issue of water and climate change and scarcity. One of the things that will come up that will be very interesting, I think, will be that in the discussion of climate change, which the forum and I think the annual meeting did an excellent job this year in raising at the top of the agenda, one of the more immediate concerns deriving from the challenge of climate change is really water. The management of water, the pricing of water, the scarcity involved. This is going to be the first real issue that's going to impact everyone, both in the industrializing and the industrializing and developing world. This, I think, will be one of the key takeaways in Davos, is a realization that the most precious natural resource really has no global price. Nobody knows how to value it, and it's actually going to be even more scarce and maybe even the source of some conflict. So I think that's something we'll highlight in Davos, and I hope we'll build awareness around at the end of the annual meeting.
And can you give us a sense of leaders from around the world who will be participating in this next annual meeting?
I think this is an important annual meeting in the sense that, as I mentioned earlier, that Asia will have a big role. We are expecting very serious presence from China because, for example, as we know, they'll be at the forefront in terms of international attention with the Beijing Olympics, but also from Japan. Japan will be hosting the G8 next year. And it has a new prime minister recently, of course, that was elected, but we're hoping that those leaders from those countries will be there. ASEAN will be very much part of the discussion. The Middle East, North America, although it's an election year, we're going to have very senior representation from the administration as well as members of Congress, those that are not running for office, but certainly will be around to influence policy, whomever is in the White House in 2008. We're expecting a very significant presence from Europe, even particularly from Russia, as we did in this past year, from the UK as well, and of course Latin America, Africa, and I think I even mentioned the Middle East. But we'll have a great opportunity to engage not only those leaders that are really in their last days in terms of their current mandate, but also new leaders who are just now given a fresh mandate. And I think it'll be exciting to bring them together around the idea of the power of collaborative innovation.